Good morning, everybody. This is Sarah. Welcome to the Finding a Common Ground, How to Effectively Improve Your Candidate and Employee Experience. My name is Sarah Misiel, and we are going to have a great conversation today. For those who don't know me, I am the founder and CEO of People Architectural Group. And so we are a human resources company that focuses on talent acquisition and talent development. We have a fun conversation today. This recording will be sent out to everyone who asks us to send it out. It will also be on our website for people to be able to refer to it, and it will also be in our YouTube channel. So for today, my co-host is Nick Allen. Nick is a user experience professional. He has a lot of great tools in his toolbox, so we are looking to really hear some common ground information of how we can improve the employee and candidate experience. Nick, welcome, and I'll let you introduce yourself some more.
Great. Hey, everyone. So I'm Nick, and I've been doing user experience for almost 20 years. I started early on in my career at General Electric, the healthcare division, and started in the factory, just working literally at the level where I'm sweeping floors and stocking shelves. And I learned something I just fell in love with, which is called lean thinking. And lean thinking believed that coming alongside a person and watching them, walking a mile in their shoes and seeing the pain they go through every day, that's the best thing you can do. Listen to them, give them the tools, help them help themselves. But really, it was kind of this upside down approach where the most valuable person was the person working on that factory floor every day. And it's a methodology. For those of you who don't know, I recommend reading a book, going to a webinar on lean thinking. But it comes from Toyota. It's about 100 years old. And I had the opportunity to study with one of the senseis, Sensei Nakao. He's one of the founders of that. And that's really where a lot of this is rooted in, is in lean thinking. And it's falling in love with people, it's problem solving, it's being creative, it's working on a shoestring budget. Most importantly, it's engaging your employees. And then fast forward 5-10 years, I started learning about design thinking, which was very much still very tangible, but it's still things and people, but it was, X-ray machines and MRI machines. And how do you turn a scary machine that you put children into, who'd have to be sedated 80% of the time, into an adventure where they want to come back tomorrow. And so for those of you who maybe have followed GE Healthcare a bit, that's something that we're known for. That's something called our adventure series. So I learned about design thinking, and again, it was very physical. It was more the industrial design side. And then about 10 years ago, I started thinking, how do we do this digitally? And what an important thing to think about as we hit COVID and the pandemic. How do we do this remotely? How do you do something that typically is done physically in person, virtually? So about 10 years ago, I founded the user experience division at GE Healthcare. And we started looking at how do you make things simple digitally for our users. And so now I'm at a big finance company. We're coming with a big healthcare product as well. And that's my past. And Sarah and I know each other. We've taken many of these approaches as well into places like Haiti and figured out how do we help problem solve and come around the people who are having a not so good day in Haiti and help them have their perfect day. So that's me. And the stuff behind me, people always ask, these are old computers from the 60s and 70s. I have a passion for antiques and electronics. And so that's me.
Awesome, Nick. Thank you so much for being here with us, and we're looking forward to learning more about you and about how lean thinking and design thinking can be implemented from an HR perspective. So just so for our agenda for today, we are going to talk a little bit about explore what the candidate and employee experience is and why is it important, and to discover the characteristics. What are some characteristics that we can expect in organizations that are really focusing on the candidate and employee experience? And we'll also discuss steps that we can take to improve the employee and candidate experience. So from there, so let's just start by talking about the exploring what the candidate experience is. So how would you describe a candidate and employee experience, Nick? And do you think they are the same?
They seem like they'd be the same, don't they? It's you're looking for an employee, you're trying to find them and court them and recruit them and entice them to come. And then once you hire them, then they're an employee. So it can be the same person, but I think they are radically different. And sometimes it could be like you're wooing a partner, right? You're trying to find someone who's give them all this time and attention, and then as soon as you hire them, it's like you ignore them, right? Good luck. Find your laptop, find a system. I know I've had jobs where it's been that way, where I felt like I was the most important person in the world, and then as soon as I got hired, I was on my own. Yeah, and barely saw the person who recruited me. And so I think they are different, but at the end of the day, we do need to treat that person the same with dignity and respect and time and attention. And so yeah.
Absolutely. So I was reading somewhere where it says an employee most likely will look for feedback outside. There are certain things that's important for candidates. And so when they will look for reviews and form an opinion of the organization before they even join a company. And so when you're thinking about why is it important to think about, why is it important for candidates and so on and so forth, it's like before somebody apply, you need to make sure that they understand where they are going, right? I always tell my candidate, as I am speaking to you and I'm interviewing you, to make sure that you fit into the organization or the client that I am recruiting for, I want to make sure that you should also be asking me questions and making sure that this is the organization that would be a good fit for you. So when you're thinking about from a lean perspective, let's just talk a little bit about the candidate experience. What are some things that you think it should be important to a candidate when they are looking for an organization to work for?
I would say, even if you don't think you have an employee experience or a candidate experience, you do. It is whatever it is today. And if you don't think you have one, if you haven't intentionally built one, your experience probably isn't so good. It's probably not great. It's probably just you inherited whatever it is, or it's coasting along. And so you have to be very intentional on both. It's the same person that you are hiring and having as employee. And I mentioned that, but the experiences are going to be radically different. They have to be intentional. You have to think about it. And so if you work backwards, if we all want to have great business results and productivity and growth, that will not happen without a dream team of people. You need to have a wonderful employee experience, or else they'll leave, especially in this market. They'll leave you right away. And so to build this dream team of employees, you have to be able to recruit them. Steve Jobs said there's really two things you need to do as a leader. One is create a vision, an amazing vision that you can rally people behind. And secondly, build a world-class team. How do you attract world-class people in this economy, in this environment? It's going to be very, very, very difficult. So you have to be very intentional on that. Once you have them, you will lose them. I think 40% of people now are looking at leaving their jobs currently, or maybe it's even 60%. And I think 40% is maybe what the statistic is. And so they will leave, especially right now, if they don't feel like they're serving a purpose, if they don't feel like it's something big and grandiose and world changing, they probably will leave because there's something else. And so it has to be something more than pay and benefits at this point. It has to be, they feel like they're there for a reason. There's a rallying cry. And so I think we have to spend a lot more time recruiting. Sometimes I've been at companies before where we just outsource the entire candidate experience and we let someone else do it. You do need help doing it, but you can't outsource it all. It's got to be a partnership. You got to be very intentional and think about how you do that. One example I'll give you on the candidate experience is Amazon. They do a great job of this. They reached out to me probably 2-3 years ago and said, we want to pay for your flight, the hotel, and we're going to fly you in and you're going to spend the whole long weekend with us, and brought us in and did a showcase. And that was a wonderful experience. And it was really no pressure. It was just come get to know us a little bit more and meet the team. And it was kind of this red carpet VIP experience. Maybe you can't afford to do that, but what's the mini version of that? Maybe it could be reaching out to someone and making them feel that way, even virtually, feel like they're the most important person. So I would say, regardless of what your experience is, if you're just coasting right now, it's going to be a poor experience. You got to be intentional. You got to figure out how you can keep people and attract them. And in this market, it's going to be really, really difficult. So I'm glad we got a full hour to talk about how we might do this.
Absolutely. So what I'm hearing you say is that one of the things that we need to do is to have a vision. The vision for attracting and retaining a candidate is one thing, but once they are your employee, there has to be a vision of what that life cycle, what the culture is like. Am I getting this right?
Absolutely. You can't expect anymore that someone is going to just apply because there's a job and that they'll stay for 5, 10 years. That's not going to work in this environment. And so there's got to be a differentiator beyond just pay and salary. There's got to be a differentiator to attract them and to keep them. And so, yeah, I like that you said a vision. We all need to figure out what is our employee, what's the vision for an employee experience. You'll hear me say perfect day. Perfect day is very important to me because it doesn't change the difficulties. Listen, there's difficulties. You're going to lose people. People maybe not apply. But despite the difficulties, what's your perfect day within that difficult day? How good can it be despite all the challenges? And so you have to have a vision that says, how do we retain people? How do we attract them? It's got to be intentional. And then you got to execute on it. So yeah, we'll talk more about that. But yes, need a vision for both.
Absolutely. One of the things that you point out too is that while you can outsource, and that's what we do. We help organization. We help organization with their recruiting and training. But I think it's very important. And one of the things that you said is that while you can outsource part of the work, the organization need to do the work to make sure that whoever they are outsourcing with understand what their culture is. They understand their benefits. So spending that time, I always love talking to the hiring manager, because when you talk to the hiring manager, the recruiter can tell you one thing, HR can tell you, but when you talk about the person who's actually going to manage that employee, you get a sense of what it is important to them. And so when you are sourcing, you are interviewing candidate while you are an outsider, you're someone from outside the organization, you can try to attract the right candidates for that organization. So I think that is something that I want to make sure. So make sure you talk to whoever is outsourcing your job with. And so, great. So another thing that we kind of talk about too, is that we can go to the next question a little bit, is that I wanted to kind of ask about, their candidate and employee experience. We'll just go to discuss the step that to take to improve the company candidate and employee. So do you have some steps specifically we can focus on, Nick?
We do. It's one of those things that the first 30, 60, 90 days as a new employee is so precious, because you'll be hypersensitive to what's broken in the process. But after 90 days, it just becomes normal. And what's normal to you could be very shocking to a new person. So I think for those 30, 60, 90 days, those new employees are great people to talk to about how was it to be recruited and hired, onboarded. And so I think that's a great partnership you can take with new employees. Don't just hire them and put them right on work, but check in with them every couple of weeks, couple of months, and take time to reflect. And you'll find out things that you never even thought. The most important thing could be, hey, my laptop didn't work, or it was the wrong type of laptop. I got a Mac and I really need a PC. Details like that, or it could be. I talked to someone on salary, yes, but they never talked about relocation. And I had questions like, could this be remote? And we just glossed over that. So there's so many things that, when someone is getting hired, they'll endure just about anything, for the job they want. And so we've got just a precious couple months to get that feedback. So I think getting feedback directly from people you've hired is absolutely important. Two other areas you got to look at to take steps. One is people that you didn't hire. I can't tell you how many people have reached out to me when I used to work at General Electric on LinkedIn and just vent their frustrations to me. And I wasn't even the hiring manager, but they would say, hey, Nick, I see we're a connection. I just applied for a job at GE and I felt completely ignored and neglected and I wasn't respected. And they just want to vent and tell somebody because they hope that it could change for the next person. And so, people who didn't get the job, it's equally important to talk to them and say, how was it? Did you feel like you were treated with dignity and respect? Were we valuable with your time? Did you feel heard? I remember I shared a good example of Amazon. A not so good one was during my interview with some hiring managers. It sounded, I wasn't on video chat, it was just a phone, but it sounded like they were literally going through a checklist of questions and just writing and documenting, but we weren't actually having a personal conversation. I wish I could have given that feedback. And that would have been great feedback to get. But it sounded like they were just trying to fill in the blanks of the data and evaluate me based on data, and not even talk to me as a person. And then, a third example I'll share is we do this specifically on employee experience. We do surveys, and surveys are good. They're not great, but they're good. They're good litmus tests. And I can directly give feedback on my boss, and my employees can give feedback on me. And it'll ask questions, and it really forces you to say, hey, what's great about your boss, your manager? What's not so great? So those are things we can look at. And then even something like an exit interview. Sometimes when someone's deciding to leave, we can maybe be a little bit, put the blinders on and say, well, it just wasn't for them. Just let them leave, right? Let's move on as quickly and painlessly as possible. But there's a reason they probably moved on. Maybe it was an amazing opportunity we couldn't match, but maybe there's a reason why they left, and it's something that we could have avoided. And so those exit interviews can be really important. So I just explained multiple data points we can look at to see how we can employ the hiring experience with a candidate as well as the employee experience.
Absolutely. So do you feel like some of the companies who have some characteristics of company who have great employee and candidate experience do the things that you just talked about?
Yeah, I honestly, I've like I said, Amazon did a great job on the recruiting, not so good on the interview. And so I see bits and pieces. I see best practices. I think it's really, really hard. One of the truths I try to live by is if it's not someone's number one priority to do something, it's just not going to get done the way you wished it would. I go to these quarterly, all hands meetings and these staff meetings, and I feel like we leave with 50 action items per person. And I just know it's not going to get done. There's no way I can do 50 things and the team can do 50 things. I'm trying to think, well, what's one thing we could do, or two or three. And so I think if you don't have someone in your company who's specifically accountable and owns the employee experience, it's not going to get done the way you wished it would get done. Someone has to own that. Someone has to own the candidate experience, and you cannot just outsource the whole experience. You're right. I think we have an internal recruiting team at the company I'm at, and we actually do partner with other recruiting companies, like Korn Ferry would be an example of one that we've partnered with, and people like them. But on my best day, I would say I want someone who thinks just like me, who knows me so well that they can come to me with candidates and I'll go, oh my gosh, that's exactly who I would have probably handpicked. The job, the culture, the values, the skill sets needed. You're thinking like we would think, the hiring team, right? And so how does that happen? You have to have a vision. Someone's got to be thinking about how are we going to recruit? Amazon, that didn't just happen on accident. They didn't woo people in through this red carpet treatment. Someone at Fidelity or at Amazon intentionally thought about that. And they probably partnered with people to make that happen, to work in the logistics. So I think the strategy for your candidate experience, your employee experience has to come from you and your team. The execution of it, the maintenance of it, the tactical logistics of it, that is something that you can outsource and partner with someone. But without that vision, it's not going to happen.
Absolutely. One of the things that we do when I'm talking to a hiring manager, not only do I want to know what the hiring manager is looking for in the new person, but I also try to think about what is the current team looks like, and understand the gap within the team, because when you do that, you can find someone who complements the people who are on the team. And I think sometimes we are just looking for someone who fit the bill. I always encourage hiring manager to make sure that they just not looking for light, right? If you had somebody that was there, you're filling the job. I love people. I love to give people an opportunity. Sometimes there are someone may have done a job that's a little bit different, but that perspective they bring to the role is totally different. Do you ever hire people who doesn't fully fit the bill, but they have comparable experience that will make the team richer?
Yeah, well, there's so many things to unpack there for sure. One thing is I don't want to hire me. I got enough of me, right? I don't want redundancy. I want things that are complementary. And I ask people, like, what's your superpower? What are you exceptionally good at? And I would love a team where they all have different superpowers and we complement each other. But you're right. There's some experience. I struggle right now. I'm in the financial industry and I'm in design. So it's like, I need to find someone who's great at design and someone who's good at finance. And it's really hard to find someone with both. And it used to be find someone who is located in North Carolina or Massachusetts or New York. So you have to find three things. And so now I'm realizing, hey, maybe their geographic location isn't so important anymore. Okay, well, now I can focus on two things, right? And it opens up 10x, 100x the amount of candidates. So then you think, what's more important, industry experience or more that high level knowledge, and they can learn the industry experience later. And so those are things that we're looking at. But yeah, we do look for someone's aptitude. We look for their attitude. And if they have both, we definitely are willing to invest in them and teach them the industry specific things. It used to be, we always looking for A+ candidates. Now we're looking for B+, and even on B+, we're getting passed up. They're hired by the time we can find them. So we're looking for maybe those B candidates where they've got a great attitude, they've got a great aptitude. They have got a few years less of experience, but that's okay. We can train on the experience, and really now we're kind of growing leaders and mentoring them as well.
So I'm hearing that one of the things that you want to look at is make sure the person have the ability, wants to learn the job. And so it may not fit perfectly, but if they want to learn, you can teach them, but they have to want that. They have to have that hunger. When you think about the candidate experience, Nick, I know you recruit a lot. You work, you have a lot of positions. From last time I talked to you, you were filling a lot of jobs. How many rounds of interview do you normally have before you make a decision?
That's a great question. So when I first joined, one of my peers, she was a senior executive in the technology organization. She said she went through 14 rounds of interviews.
Oh my
14, goodness. And this was internal. She was already internal. This was just an internal move, right? When I went through, I probably went through, I don't know, half a dozen. I flew to 2 states. At one point I met with the entire team of 30. it was a lot. Now, fast forward 2 years since the pandemic, we do pretty much 2 rounds of interviews and we're done. And it's really tough because 2 rounds of interviews includes me, includes our partners. So it's not just me and my team interviewing, we have our partners who interview too, because it's a partnership, right? I need product and technology to have some say in this as well. And you just really don't get to know the candidate enough. And then, it's more of a group interview where I have 2 or 3 people. So, but we've learned that they'll get hired by someone else. We have such little time. They will only make it to 2 rounds of interview before they get hired somewhere else. So, we've had to adapt and figure out how do you ask those questions. And you look for some of those qualities you talked about, that hunger and desire. I'll tell you what's changed, I think, in the last 2 years. Myself, some of my peers and staff I just hired, all have said the reason they took this job was because the person that recruited and hired them. There's more about that person than it was the industry or the pay and the benefits. Trust me, those all have a huge influence, but ultimately it was who they were going to be working for. And they really were looking for a visionary. They wanted someone to believe in, who had a grand vision to go. And so we found out that means a lot more. But yeah, 2 rounds of interviews and then you find out once you hire the person, it's kind of like an arranged marriage. You find out real quick, if it's going to be compatible or not. And for the most part, you find people are good, and you can make it work. You can be compatible. Maybe it wasn't perfect, but that's okay. None of us are, and you make it work.
So I'm hearing streamlining. So since the pandemic, I'm hearing streamlining your process of the interview, the round of the interview is very important. And so when you think about the employee experience, how have the employee experience changed for you, onboarding people? How has that changed since the pandemic for you?
Yeah, well, it used to be all about and I think there was a lot of thought into the onboarding experience physically. So welcome them in, have a gift, bag. We had classes they would go to, you learn about your benefits. We did a great job. And then as soon as we went remote, none of that's happening anymore. And so I think all those good processes and best practices we had for in person, we're not doing those anymore. And so now, like I said, if you don't have an experience, you do. It just, your experience is no experience right now, right? That's the experience. And so I think we're probably guilty of that, which is we didn't really replace that physical experience that we had polished so well over years and decades with an equally good virtual experience. And so it's different, and that's okay. I'll tell you right now, it's a lot of getting to know the team first. it assumes you have technology and a laptop and an account. And I feel like no matter how well we do with that, it's still a struggle. I can't tell you how many times we've ordered a laptop and then it turns out it's not working or they can't log in for various reasons. But it's so important that, that employee has gone through so much to get here. And then day one, they want to feel like they got all the tools they need and they can be productive. And so, but yeah, a lot of onboarding right now has kind of defaulted to, hey, in the first month, could you just get to know the team a bit? Maybe not a whole lot of, throwing them right into work, but letting them acclimate a little bit and get to know the team and build those relationships. That's been a great thing for us to do. Just giving them time to just acclimate and meet people and build those relationships. We call it going slow to go fast. If you put them to work right away and they don't know the team, you know the old, right? Forming, storming, norming, performing. You're not going to go to performing. You're going to be hitting all those things. And so you got to take time to do that. So I think that's part of our onboard experience. And honestly, I wish I could tell you more, but we're still figuring it out together. And it's not what it should be. It's not what it was when we were having people physically come into the workplace.
So what I'm hearing you say is that for the employee experience, having a great communication is clear. So people understand where they need to be, how they need to do it. Because we can't just walk up into their desk and say, hey, come here, let's go to lunch. So having that communication is important. Do you have any, from a best practice perspective, do you have meetings, regular team meetings? How are you doing more now than before the pandemic?
I don't know that we're doing more now. Actually, we're always trying to reduce them, as much as we can. But we do make two things I'll share as a best practice. One is we're doing a pairing system. We're trying to pair people together. I know I had that. That is one of the most important things you can do. Your processes will break. It's not a matter of if, they will. Laptops will not work when they come out of the box. There's all these onboarding things that will just break down. But if there's a person attached to the hip, shoulder to shoulder alongside them the whole way, it will cover a multitude of mistakes and problems. And so having that partnership that they can go through step by step, each step of the way for the first 30, 69 days is so important. So partnering with someone doing that pairing system, and I wouldn't even stop it. That could continue for years. Having them work as a pair is a great thing. We talk about complementary, they'll complement each other. And so that's a great best practice. The other one I'll share is taking the time to do some team building, getting to know you is so important. In virtual, like I said, when you're together, you get the water cooler talk, you have lunch together, you have opportunities in the evenings. And so team building is a little more natural. When we're remote, you can spend the whole day on calls and never really get to know your team. Mm-hmm. And you have to, like I said, if it's not your number one priority, if someone's number one priority to do that, it's not going to happen. We'll all forget to do it and run out of time. Is someone on your team responsible for this team building? There better be. And actually on my team, we have a committee. It's kind of cool that we have a social committee, it's called. It's people who want to do this. There's nothing worse than being voluntold to be on the social, right? The socials are, and you're in charge of it and you don't want to do it. And so you kind of put half the amount of effort into it. Might have a committee of people who want to do this, who love doing it, and it's going to be so much fun. And so that's it could be part of the candidate recruiting where you have kind of like the Amazon experience where you come in and you have this wonderful red carpet experience, or they could do the employee experience where it's daily or weekly or monthly. I would hope that we have something from employee experience daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, something that we do. And, it's okay to have fun. I have 1.5, 2 hour long staff meetings. It's our monthly all hands. And we kick it off with 15 minutes of just getting to know you. Just fun, getting to know you. We throw a question out there, a personal question, everyone kind of answers, and we break into small sub teams and go through that. And then we have a 7-minute presentation where someone can come in and present on something personal that they're passionate about. Maybe it's crocheting, or maybe it's arts, or maybe it's cooking. We had one person do a whole cooking experience for 7 months, but just for 7 minutes, but just something fun baked into your daily rigor.
Nice. One of I saw a research that says 51% of job seekers get frustrated when they are hired, and when they come on board, what they are expected to do is different. Yep. So right now, what can people do to ensure that doesn't happen on their team?
Yeah, I feel like I'm probably guilty of this too, where you hire someone for job X, and then when you come, you realize you actually need, more support on Y. I don't think you can ever avoid that. I think when you hire someone, and this goes both ways, as an employee, when you're hired, they hired you, your aptitude, your attitude, your personality, your skill set, and you're there to help solve problems. And if today they need, A, B, and C solved, and tomorrow they need X, Y, and Z solved, we as employees should be okay with that, right? There's no contract guarantee for the most part that says, here's the 5 tasks you're going to do for the rest of your life. We got to be willing to adapt and change. They hired you, and you are a flexible, dynamic person. So I think we need to be okay with that to an extent. But on the flip side, the level of clarity and using layman's terms. So sometimes we write these job descriptions using cryptic, industry specific or company specific speak that nobody understands. Mm-hmm. So I don't even know why people apply to them half the times. The terms, the nouns, the verbs don't make sense to anyone but us. And so I think to have it written from an external perspective would help. Would 90% of people understand this? Understand with clarity what the role is, what you need and want. I almost wish we would just always write it from an outsider's perspective versus an insider's perspective. That's on the job description. And then, through the interview, it's really hard, but just being honest. I know you're there to sell them, but honesty is really good to say, hey, maybe we don't know. Maybe it's a bit ambiguous. We need you to help figure out what this will become and where we'll do. So being honest, because for them to feel like they were misled and get frustrated, trust it's not worth it. Let them go where they need to go, because they will leave eventually. And then you're go back to, all the way back to step one and have to hire someone. So be honest. But talk about the great things and talk about the not so great things. I think people respect that. But yeah, I think that's what I'd recommend.
Okay, good. So what I'm hearing you say is that when we write job description, we should get away from the buzzwords and focus on what it is that you really want to. So cut the long paragraphs and all of that. So talk to the people. And I also hear you say that candidates need to be open and agile. And so if they want to grow, and you don't want to be the same person that you are today, 5 years from now. So in order for you to grow in your career, you have to be able to be agile and be willing to take on other projects that is different than what you've done before.
I mean, that's the quality I want in some of the employees I hire. Now it's different if you're hired for a very specific skill set and that's your contract, you have a labor union. I'm not talking about that, but kind of in the professional services where you're salaried and there's not those labor unions or contracts. And yeah, I mean, the only thing we know is change, right? Think about the last 2 years, the change that's happened. If you were hired to be in a specific office for a specific task, for a specific team, that's all changed in the last 2 years. And so we need to find the ways to make that work. But being honest, I just hired a VP, and she told me, during the interview, you talk about all these good things, and you never know, right? She's like, you never know until you get there. But she's like, it's true. It's actually true, right? And so I didn't oversell it. I didn't undersell it. We were just trying to be honest. And I told her sometimes I worry when I recruit someone, I'm too honest, and I'll maybe lose someone. So you don't want to air out all your dirty laundry. But what happens? I hire them, and as soon as they come in the first week or two, guess what I'm doing? I'm telling them all the tough things, right? So they'll eventually find out. And so it's important. It's important. One of the things that I appreciate when I got hired was I asked my team, tell me where all the landmines are. Meaning, I like that. Meaning, I'm going to walk around with the best of intentions, with the biggest smile on my face, and try to do things, but there's going to be landmines I'm going to step on. And it's really going to frustrate people and rub them the wrong way. And I didn't even know they were there. So help me understand those landmines. And that's something that's important for new employees, because they're going to go with the best of intentions and try to change things and do things and question things. And there's going to be some landmines out there that they don't know, that there's 4 or 5 years worth of pain where we did it and undid it and did it and undid it. And if you do it again, at least be aware. At least they know they're there, and then they can do it. I walked into so many all hands, and I would say something, a certain word, a certain phrase, and it was like the whole team recoiled because I used that certain word I shouldn't have used, and I had no clue. So that'd be important as well.
So Nick, when your new hire starts, do you give them a document that let them know what is expected of them for the first 30 days or however long, 90 days, 30, 60, 90 days?
We do have a document. Actually, one of my directors just shared with me. I have an onboarding document. So it's good. There's a checklist of 20 things that I need to make sure I'm doing.
Mhm.
I probably won't be able to do all 20, to be honest. And so I have to be able to ask my admin to help me do some of those and my directors to help do some of those. I think most employees want to come in with a 30, 60, 90 day, tell me what to do and how to do it for the first 30, 60, 90 days. And we struggle with that here because sometimes we over index on the relationship building. Hey, we want you to meet the team and build relationships and build quality relationships. And they're looking for something specific. We all want that dopamine in our brain where we accomplish small tasks. So I think there's got to be a mix of, here are very specific, unambiguous tasks that you can do so you feel like you're making a difference. And mixed in with that, some of the more of those ambiguous things, build relationships, help. We want to get some of your opinions on some strategy. So I think it's got to be a mixture of two things, but absolutely we owe it to our employees to give them those expectations. I know when I've been hired, it could be, Nick, you need to, turn around the whole market in the first 90 days and unrealistic expectations. And I've also felt the flip where it's like, hey, just build relationships for 90 days. And then I feel bored out of my mind. And I feel like, why did I even take this job? I'm not even making a difference. So it's got to be a mixture of both.
And your 30, 60, and 90 days, do you provide them with a list of who they should know? Who they should contact?
We should be doing that. That was provided to me when I was hired. I have not provided that to the VP I just hired. And so it's more verbal. And that's one thing you got to understand too, is we are all very different creatures. I'm like kind of the creative free spirit thinker, and I need to partner with people who are a little more administrative.
Okay.
And so my admin can help me do that. And, don't take the whole burden on yourself. And so we need that mixture. But I also realize I'm a person. I'm a Zoom type of person, video call person. So I can get in a video call, have a conversation, answer those questions, tell you why we're doing it. And that's really good, right? And I can verbally tell you, but then complement that with that very rigorous administrative list of things. Sometimes we can do the opposite, where we give them a list and we don't talk to them for 30 days and they're completely on their own and they don't know why they're talking to this person. And so I think you got to give both.
Absolutely. So I know that candidate and employee experience are important, but do you think that the candidate experience, the employee experience is all about satisfaction? Satisfaction. Or employee satisfaction?
It's so tough. I was at a webinar a couple of years ago and someone said, hey, Nick, how do you, in a digital perspective with apps and websites, how do you make sure you hit boomers and Gen Z and Zennials and millennials? And I said, well, you have to meet them all where they're at. Some of them it's going to be print, others is going to be websites, others will be mobile apps, others will be social media, others will be influencers. You got to do it all. You got to do it all. It's really, really hard. And I think it's the same thing with employee experience. It's not just one thing. It's not just one thing. And so satisfaction, well, you've heard I think there was a study they did where they paid someone certain money to dig holes and then fill them again. And they kept doubling the pay every day. And eventually everyone quit because it's just meaningless work. The money didn't matter. I've been there. I've been at places where I'm like, there's not enough money in the world to do this, but then does money matter? Yeah. If you constantly are in a survival mode and it's not an overspending issue, but you just, you're not getting paid on time. Let's say when I first started my career, sometimes I'd miss paychecks. You'll burn people out real quick. They'll leave, even if they're satisfied with the work. So you've got to deliver on everything. It's really tough. And this is why I was saying it has to be someone's number one priority to do each one of these things. So I think we talk about that vision. Maybe you find out there's 5 things that are very important. Do you have 5 people in your organization who each own one of those? So the social committee, does someone own that? Onboarding, does someone own that? Recruiting, does somebody own that? And I'm talking about not a tactical, but from a strategic perspective. What's our vision? What are we going to do? Does someone own and make sure that you are executing properly, to look at your metrics and your KPIs and that you're paying people on time? But then overall, yes. Are you able to articulate your vision on why your team does what they do and what it means to the world? And it doesn't have to be a Hallmark video, but everyone wants to feel that satisfaction, though, that they are doing something that's bigger than themselves it means something, it's going to get used. When I was at GE, I poured my soul into being the director of technology. It was my first director role. And I would just pour myself out into these apps and make them as perfect as I could. And then they never got bought or sold or used. I just sat on a shelf. And I was like, that is it. And that's what had me form the UX department was, and UX is user experience design, which is, I don't want to just pour myself into something that nobody uses, doesn't mean anything. I'm going to make sure I actually work with users and figure out what their perfect day would be and build that so it actually will get used. And so that satisfaction needs to come somehow. Your employees have to be able to understand your mission, your vision, how they specifically pour into it. NASA, there was a janitor. I don't know if this is true or one of those stories you hear, but they said, they went and interviewed people at NASA and asked them what they do. And they interviewed the janitor and he said, what do you do? And he says, I'm helping put a man on the moon. That janitor felt that vision and that satisfaction of what he was doing to contribute to the bigger piece. And so in this day and age, especially as you recruit people and as you have an employee, they have to know what that vision is and they got to feel like they're a part of it or else they'll go somewhere else because they don't have that satisfaction.
So, especially now, Nick, with the pandemic, people are working remotely. So everyone is like in their own little island. So understanding the vision, understanding where you're going as an organization is more important than ever before. Because if you don't, you have to figure out how you are connected to that organization. Otherwise, it's like you don't feel like you're part of something.
Exactly.
So I like that. So what do you think is the business impact if we don't get the candidate and employee experience correct?
Yeah, well, I was at a pre-COVID. I used to go to conferences all the time, and I do miss them. I miss meeting everyone and all that. But Best Buy was there, and they said that I think they really, like we all did, they thought about they were customer obsessed. Don't we want to be customer obsessed? They were, and then they neglected their employees, and so the employees out there on the sales floor. And they've got that tablet they're using or whatever it was at the time, and the tools are just not working. They're just bombing out. They can't serve the customer because their employee tools are not good. And so what happens? Frustrated employee can't serve the customer, and now they are taking it out on the customer. You've all been there, right? Where you feel like the employee doesn't want to be there. They don't care about you, right? So we are customer obsessed. We neglect our employee and their tools and their experience. And so trust me, the customer feels it. They see it, they feel it, and that you will lose that customer. So I think we've had the focus flipped. We've got to reverse it. We have to be employee obsessed with our employees, because guess what? Those frontline employees are the people who work with the customer every day, and it translates over. We're doing a thing right now with product where I'm telling the team, the digital products, the websites, the mobile apps, everything we build is going to be a reflection of how we're organized. So if we're organized by 50, 100, 200 teams, and we're all going 100 different directions, 100 miles per hour, our products are going to feel that way. It's not going to feel like one cohesive experience. It's going to feel like it was built by 100 different teams at 100 miles per hour. So the employee experience will get reflected in your customer experience. So we got to switch it up. Not that we neglect our customers, but we should be obsessed with our employees, and those in frontline employees who work on this every day, they will then have the mental energy and the tools necessary to be obsessed with the customer. Another great example of this is someone who's customer obsessed. I think it was White Hen. Remember White Hen? It was like a coffee shop. There was an undercover boss, and this is probably 15 years ago. I saw it 10 years ago. There was this White Hen that sold 10 times more coffee than any other White Hen. So the undercover boss they visited, and they couldn't figure out why. The coffee wasn't any different. It wasn't a great location by any stretch of imagination. They went, and there was this little old lady, and she was like grandma to everyone who came in there, and she was building relationships. Because of her as an employee, she attracted so many customers that she sold all this coffee, because the employee felt safe and provided for and cared for, and they were just a wonderful person. But it was that perfect mixture, and it just rubbed off on all the customers, and it attracted customers 10x. Imagine if all of your employees felt the same way that little old lady felt in every interaction and every day. And you felt it too when you call customer support lines and you get someone who clearly doesn't care, and then you get someone who wants to go the extra mile and they actually ask you personal questions. That's what a good customer experience can yield. And that's how it hits the bottom dollar. That's how it hits our customers.
So what I'm hearing you say is that when you focus on your employees, it will impact your bottom line, whether
Directly.
positively or negatively. And I
Absolutely.
also heard you say that the vision is important. So understanding where you're going, understanding what it is that you want to do, and make sure that that vision is carried out by your employees. Your employees understand what that vision is so they can help you implement it, right?
Absolutely. So, and that vision should be in high definition. It should be visual. You should be able to see it. So we make so many decisions every day. I don't know. Are those decisions moving us closer or farther away from our vision? If you don't have a vision, you're just going to flounder around for years. Now, the vision can be grandiose, and you may think we'll never get there. It's too big. It's too optimistic. It's not realistic enough. Well, guess what? If you have the vision out there, every day you make a decision, you get closer. Eventually, you'll get there, or you'll get halfway there, or get 3/4 of the way there, and that's a huge improvement. So that vision, you have to be able to see. Einstein said, in order to understand something, you have to be able to explain it to a 5th grader. That vision should be in 5th grade form too. Your 5th graders should be able to understand it as well. That way, all your employees will understand it. But a vision for how we're going to be a wonderful place to a wonderful family that enjoys social time together. A vision for how we're going to recruit the best and brightest. A vision for how we're going to make sure our employees feel cared for when they're recruited, when they're onboarded, and when they stay with us for 2 or 3 years. Without that vision, if you don't have a vision for each of those individually, like I said, you'll have an experience. It'll be whatever it is. It won't be good. And that vision is different than making small steps. That vision is working backwards to say, where do we want to be 5, 10 years from now? What would be the perfect day onboarding an employee? By the way, that vision shouldn't be your vision as a manager. That should be the employee who got onboarded's vision, right? Right? It's the person who goes through the pain every day, kind of my old lean thinking days. I was onboarded. It was excruciating. Did we pause and ask those people we onboarded, what would be your perfect way of being onboarded? Because the things that matter to them will be very different to the things to me as a manager. And so that vision has to come from the people who are going through the pain every day. What's your vision for the employee experience? It shouldn't come from you as a manager. It should come from the employees. Now, you as a manager or a leader might be accountable. It's your number one priority to make sure it happens. But that vision has to come from the actual people who are going through the pain every day. And that's one of the biggest challenges I see, Sarah, is so many times we'll come up with a customer vision. Here's what customers want. And then I find out we actually never talk to a customer. We talk to internal customers, or we talk to people who used to be customers, but never actual real customers. Same with our employees. We can come up with a vision, an HR vision. Did we actually talk to employees? Well, we talked to employees. They're HR employees. No, what about the factory employees, right? Did we talk to them? And I think that's probably the most important thing in all this is actually talking to the very people who go through these problems every day. Listening to them, helping them co-create is so important. Helping them co-create a vision with you. That's very different than me creating a vision, getting their feedback. That's one thing. I'm not talking about that. Having them come up with the vision, and you are more facilitating it and listening in it and repeating it back to them and showing it to them and helping them to shape it. But their vision, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are employees for 3, 4, 5 years. Doesn't matter what you think, it matters what they think.
So what I'm hearing you say is that getting feedback from the candidates, getting feedback from the employees is what's going to help you improve your organization, whatever that vision is. You set and I love that vision. You didn't say it exactly like that, but I'm hearing vision is the roadmap to where you're going. Where you're going. So, and feedback will help you understand what is in the life. I love that exercise you did at one of the training I attend for you, where you said, what is your perfect day look like? So maybe having candidates tell you, what is my perfect recruiting experience is? What is my perfect employee experience is from the full life cycle? This will give you insight into what they want, and so you're preparing for those who are coming after them. I love exit interviews, because when I do exit interview, I tell people, tell me everything, because it's not so much for you, but it's for everyone who's still there and those who are coming. So tell me what I could have done to improve my organization. So I love that.
Yeah, one of the things people ask me, what kind of tools do you use, Nick, to do all this? And I say, well, the best tool is a marker and a whiteboard.
Mm.
Imagine you find your employees or people you onboarded or people you recruited, and you give them a marker and a whiteboard and say, sketch out. So powerful to do sketches, pictures, pictures worth 1,000 words. Sketch out your perfect day being onboarded, your perfect onboarding experience, and sketch it out. And you're not just getting feedback. They are literally creating their perfect day. Now, perfect day, I'll give you an example. I have a sister-in-law who's a teacher. And she's very passionate as a teacher. She's been doing it a long time, has a lot of opinions on how things ought to be done. And when COVID hit, she felt like, the higher ups told them what to do and sought feedback. And she was not happy with it at all. She said, I wished, and she's like, Nick, your perfect day thing. I wish they would have brought all the teachers in, given us a marker and a whiteboard and said, I can't change that COVID's here. We can't change masks. We can't change remote. But in the midst of all those things, what would be your perfect day? Teaching remotely or teaching with masks on. And let the teachers draw out what that day looks like, from waking up in the bed in the morning to going to bed at night, that whole day, commuting, not commuting, setting up calls, things like that. And then start to look for all the best practices, all the bright points on all those teachers' whiteboards, and bring that 80% together. And maybe that becomes the vision. That's radically different than a board somewhere or the higher ups putting together their plan when they don't teach every day and they haven't taught in COVID and getting feedback. And so hopefully you see the difference there, is giving that marker to that person, having them sketch it out. And again, you can't remove the difficult things. There's some things that we can't change. Some things we can't change. But in the midst of that, how good could it be? And that is the vision that we're looking for.
I love that. I love that. We have had a conversation full of a lot of great things. But one of my last question is, people usually think that the candidate experience and the employee experience should be owned by HR. Do you believe that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think HR is in a great spot to help best practice share. Right? They can kind of look horizontally and they can kind of share best practices and come up with templates. I think it has to be a partnership, regardless of whether your HR team is internal or you're outsourced it, but it has to be the partnership. We talked about that vision so much and your employees so much that it has to be a continuous cycle. And by the way, COVID didn't exist 2 years ago. So the vision you had 2 years ago is going to be different than the one you need to make today. So you can't just set it and forget it. And so I think you can bubble up best practices. HR can start to kind of standardize things and share best practices and create those checklists and create those metrics and track everything. But they're not the employee. They're not the factory worker. They're not the salesperson who's out there traveling 24/7. They're not the teacher. And so they can't just be alone in their office, just executing for year after year after year. They got to be out with the people. They got to be doing those sessions we talked about, co-creating, come up with those visions. They got to be partnering with hiring managers. And then, like I said, collecting those best practices is great. Standardizing those best practices is great. Showing metrics, insights, and where we need to improve. Industry best practices is great. They can be a great COE, a great team, but they've got to stay engaged. And you as a manager are probably one of the biggest reasons why someone took the job or is leaving the job. Mm-hmm. And so as a manager, this is probably one of the most important things. I just said, Steve Jobs said, 2 most important things as a leader is build a world-class team. Mm-hmm. That's any leader. And so, yeah, I think a good partnership, but we can't check out and just assume HR is going to do everything and go on autopilot. It's got to be that 50-50 partnership.
I love that. So I truly believe that HR could be where it resides, but it's a partnership. Everyone at an organization has a job and helps someone understand what your organization is, how they do, what their culture is. You all contribute to that. And for us, the employee life cycle, it's part of everyone, is it? Because we have influencers, we have leaders at every level of the organization. And so when we think about what that vision is, someone may have a vision, but in order for it to come alive, we need to have people who sponsor you. They need to be sponsored at every level of the organization. So Nick, I'll give you a chance if you have any last minute, any final comments you want to share with us?
I do. There's one of my favorite stories is about a bus. It's about a big bus that moves students around. We were doing a winter trip for high schoolers. And there was about 40 high schoolers. We took to a winter camp, and it was the last day. We were heading home. We got the whole bus packed up with all the luggage and put all the kids in the bus. And we had to drive up this hill, and it just snowed. And there was so much snow that the bus couldn't make it up the hill. And they got a tractor, one of those big, I don't know, some sort of big John Deere tractor thing. And they got a steel cable and they tried to pull the bus out. And I remember the tractor was sliding around. It clearly wasn't working. So someone took a big pickup truck and hooked up chains to the tractor. And so the truck is pulling the tractor's pulling the bus. And now all three of these things are sliding around. And it was getting dangerous. All this tension on that wire was where it was going to snap and hurt somebody. So we said, all right, stop. And one of the leaders was I thought they were joking around. They said, hey, kids, push the bus. And I'm like, obviously, these three giant vehicles with all this power didn't work. How are these kids going to work? But the 40 kids ran behind the bus and pushed, and they pushed the bus right out. It was unbelievable. Pushed the bus right out. What these giant machinery couldn't do, these 40 kids could do. And I think about that, and I thought, wow, look at the power of 40 high schoolers. It's massive. So you may be thinking, hey, Nick, I wasn't at General Electric. I'm not part of a huge company. We don't have, 4,000 people, 400,000 people, 400 people. Well, do you have 40? Do you have 10? There is a massive power in 40 people, in 10 people, in 5 people. And so no matter how big your company is or small your company is, if everyone is aligned towards a vision, it will happen. It will happen. And I think that's the thing. We got to be aligned to the vision. I think it was Zig Ziglar said, if you don't have a target, you'll miss it every single time. So we can just wander through life aimlessly, just day to day, without that vision, that target we won't hit. So I'm excited to hear what people come up with, and maybe just pick one. What's your vision for some sort of social committee and social interaction to have a little bit of fun in this 2 years of pandemic? Maybe pick one that you want to do, and then we'd love to see how it's going. So thank you for your time. It's been wonderful being a guest. I wish best of luck to everyone. I hope to see you all soon.
Well, everybody, thank you for joining us. If there's anyone who's listening to this who would like help creating their employee experience or candidate experience, we would love to connect you, whether with Nick or with People Architectural Group. He's here to support you. Again, we are a human resources company that provide talent acquisition and talent development. And I look forward to seeing you on our next webinar. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and have a great day.